We are now on the eve of Remembrance Weekend. Unfortunately, due to the sad circumstances that are in our region at this time, there was a decision to cancel this year's events in the different cemeteries, British Commonwealth war graves cemeteries throughout the country. It was a decision that was made by the CWGC, and the reason is probably because there are no secured areas over there where people can run to in the case of an alert of a missile attack. We respect that decision, and therefore we decided not to do any commemoration of our own this year. Understanding the difficulties we have this year, we decided to take a different approach. I asked good people, good friends from all over the country to go to a nearby monument that is connected somehow to the memory of the Great War, and to put there a red flower, a small token of our appreciation, memory, commemoration, lest we forget. We decided that it would be a more appropriate thing to concentrate this time on the Jewish contribution to the fallen of the Great War in this period over here in the land of Israel. We are now at the old cemetery of Rishon LeZion, and this is where we have a fascinating concentration of different types of graves and places of commemoration. This one over here is dedicated to Jewish people who were recruited to the Ottoman army and sent over to the borders of the land of Israel and into the Sinai Peninsula. They died from disease and were brought over to be buried in a Jewish cemetery for eternal burial. And note the year 1915, the beginning of the war. We don't know the names of the people, and therefore in Hebrew it says the unknown soldier, who were brought to burial from the Turkish southern front. We are now approaching the highest spot on the ancient hill, and here we're going to find one of the most fascinating graves connected to the heritage of World War I in Israel. Very unique, unusual grave of a British Jewish officer from the Rothschild family. Now, the Rothschilds were heavily involved with the development of Rishon LeZion, the colony, which is today a major city, and we see it in the background. However, he was injured in a battle not too far from where we are, brought to Cairo. There he died in hospital and was buried in the Jewish cemetery in Cairo. About a year and a half later, his remains were brought over here, and a second funeral took place from the great synagogue of Rishon LeZion, and he was buried up here on the highest spot of the ancient hill, and with this beautiful stone, which is identical to the different stones of the family in London, his parents, and so on. So we're talking about Major Evelyn de Rothschild, who was injured badly in the charge of Mrar, which is many times pronounced in English El Muar, and that's mentioned both here in Hebrew and in the English inscription. The British forces were assisted by a Jewish spy ring, which is very known well throughout the world as Nili. One of the members of Nili, who was actually hanged to death in Damascus, was brought later on for his final rest over here. It says here in the Hebrew letters that was taken to the gallows in Damascus. And note that we're talking about December 1917, which means about a month after the fall of Major Evelyn de Rothschild, who we visited just a few minutes ago. The spy ring was a major factor in the success of the British forces. The person who was leading the spy ring became one of the most closest consultants of General Allenby and had a major role in the liberation of the country at the time. He himself, we're talking about Aaron Aronson, he himself disappeared in a plane crash over the canal, and he is commemorated in Zichron Yaakov, a little bit further up north. To me, this is one of the most moving monuments connected to the period of the Great War in the entire country. But these days, in the view of what happened and is happening in the south, it's even more chilling. This is of a Jewish farmer, a very successful one, called Tzvi Hirschfeld. Tzvi was recruited and sent over to the south to actually stand and to manage the first Jewish farm that was created in the south part of Israel, a place called Ruchama. That was before the Great War, and during the Great War he was heavily involved with lots of activities that are connected to that period. For instance, there are reports that Lawrence of Arabia visited him at Ruchama and tried to recruit the farm and Hirschfeld himself to the British intelligence. He was heavily involved with the assistance of Jewish people who were recruited and sent to the south, as we saw a few minutes ago at the first monument. Later on, he assisted of finding solutions how to bring those children of Israel to a grave in a Jewish cemetery. And he did that at Ruchama itself, he did it at Hebron, Beersheba, and he was involved in the sending of the people over here as well. Unfortunately, the farm, which had a very, very impressive well, became a focus of interest, naturally, for the Ottoman army. And later on in the war, it was not possible anymore to sustain the farm over there. And so during 1917, at one stage, Ruchama is evacuated, and Hirschfeld returns over here to his house in Rishon LeZion. Only a short while passes, and he passes away from typhus. This column is fascinating. He brought it from Gaza. This is one of the ancient columns of one of the synagogues of ancient Gaza. He purchased it. Other versions say he was given that by one of the families of the community of Gaza. And he took it with him to Ruchama, and he took it with him when he left Ruchama and came to Rishon LeZion. On top of the inscription, which is relating to the details and the story of Hirschfeld himself, we have an ancient inscription from the old synagogue. And this inscription is believed to have its own powers. And it says here in free translation, "The angel who's redeeming me from all evil will bless me and grant me to go and arrive at Jerusalem. So as we see, the Jewish connection of the Great War is so powerful. And to connect this inscription from Gaza here today when we are commemorating Armistice Day and Remembrance Day, I feel it's very powerful and moving.